You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Clean Comedy Podcast. It's James, and I'm back with a great guy. You guys seen him before. Last time when he came, he did a dry bar. Now he has a new album coming out called World's Greatest Dad, and in parentheses, Participant, which I'm so excited about that. Something about the world's greatest phrase always makes me think of The Office. I don't know if that's ever intentional by anybody, but it is. But please welcome the very funny, the very talented Ricky Glore. Welcome, Ricky. Welcome to the podcast. Yay.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, man, you look amazing. I love the beard too. You have like great facial hair. You're just you're a handsome dude. I don't know,
yeah. Thank you.
I want to be as handsome as you one day. That's my goal.
World's most handsomest dad. Yeah, last time I was on, it was I think a twofer. I think it was me and Glenn Tickle.
That's right.
Promoting my first album, which he produced, Spitting Image. And not that I didn't love Glenn. I don't love Glenn and what he does and his production company, Circus Trapeze Records.
Trapeze, yep.
So I think we told the story last time. I was looking to get produced my first album and recorded it in February 2020 and then released it right in the middle of pandemic, which was awesome. Along with my dry bar, I had looked up like smaller labels for production of comedy albums, and an article about him self-producing and coming up with Circus Trapeze and hitting the top 10 Billboard came up, and I reached out to him, I guess like a lot of young comics have, and was like, would you like to produce? And he sent me, because I didn't know him, a canned response being like, I suggest producing it yourself, doing it just like I did. And so I didn't want to do that. I wanted him to do it, and I wanted someone else. I wanted that little bit of a cachet and a little bit of a feeling like, oh, I'm worthy enough to have someone else do it. So him and I ended up meeting, doing some shows together, and he's like, okay, yeah, I'll produce your album. Loved what he did. When I had the opportunity to have my next album produced by Comedy Dynamics, who they're releasing a lot of dry bar comedies back catalog, and they've released, if you go to their website, they have an awesome catalog of older specials and new specials. I reached out to him and I said, would this hurt your feelings? And he's like, no. He's like, if Comedy Dynamics would produce my next special, he's like, I'd do it through them too. And so
they would. I don't know what's Glenn. You know what? I'm texting him after this. He should be hitting up Comedy Dynamics. He's amazing. He would. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he's got it. That's the only reason why I, on a whim, hit them up just to see if they would be interested. Is because they do have the back catalog of Dry Bar. Yeah, they won Glenn Tickle, his Dry Bar, and all the clips associated blow mine out of the water.
Yeah, he's awesome. Jeez,
I'll say it here. Glenn Tickle is a much finer, funnier comedian than I.
And I for sure.
Yeah.
And I for sure. He's awesome. He's one of my favorite people. So the first one was released during the pandemic. How long did it take you to write this new set to get ready for World's Greatest Dad Participant? How long did it take you to build that material up?
Probably about 2 years. There are some things here and there that I had been working on when I was working on Spitting Image, but honestly, a lot of what this special is, as Spitting Image was by cover, and the pictures in the album were me and my 6-month-old daughter wearing the exact same outfit. The picture of the album of World's Greatest Dad is me and my now 3-year-old daughter in a bathtub with bubble beards. Yeah. So the album is the evolution of the relationship of being a father with her, the evolution of me and my wife, the evolution of me and my wife's family. There's a portion of a track called Brenda, which is about my mother-in-law, who now lives with us after the passing of my father-in-law. So it is literally chronicling the last 2 years, like not hitting COVID, just because it's a real downer. Not that there's not humor to be mined from there. There's just none of that exists in that World's Greatest Dad, the difference is having a toddler, what it's like being parents of a toddler, what
Yep.
it's like being in a family within a toddler, and then also reflecting on more stuff from my childhood, like the roller rink, just mining. So like the first album has about growing up in Campbell County, Northern Kentucky. This album has about, before you're able to drive, the coolest place to go to on a Friday or Saturday night is when your parents could drop you off at the roller rink.
Yep.
And
I
then
did that too.
I just talk about that in unrealistic R&B songs about how they taught
Boys to men, how they make love to you.
yeah, well, just all of them of how they were teaching heterosexual white teenagers how to hit on women inappropriately.
Yeah,
And
100%.
yeah.
Actually, like that's the first. Okay, so the skating rink for me was the first place I ever saw Headbangers Ball, and I ever watched Beavis and Butthead. Like those are the two things that I saw like late at night on Friday, Saturdays roller skating. Like I had this like big screen, they would just like put it on there, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" Like beyond anything I could possibly think of. And then learning how to talk to girls was definitely like the big part.
Learning how to talk. I love that you say learning how to talk to girls. I think it was inappropriate expectations that girls would reciprocate any bit of interest that you would have in them, like they would have in you. Like,
no, and then, like here's the bad thing is like I would play like there was an arcade there too, and it was like 50 dudes around the arcade like thinking that like girls would think you're cool because you could beat this level of WrestleMania or like Centipede or Donkey Kong or whatever it was playing.
Hey, you see those initials?
Yeah. Those are mine. Number two, but I'm gonna take number one. Yeah, it was 100% like
King crap of Turd Mountain right here.
yeah, exactly right. So I listened to. I didn't get to listen to all the tracks.
For shame.
I know. For shame. I had a busy day. I'm sorry.
Okay.
But your opening track, you mentioned. Were you actually playing a ukulele?
Yeah.
Okay, it's funny because I'm learning to play the ukulele, so it's funny that like was brought up, and I was like, oh my gosh, like
you're probably just as good at playing it as I am. The only reason I'm as good at playing the guitar now as I was when I started when I was in 8th grade, so not that good. I started playing the ukulele because the guitar is a much more cumbersome musical instrument to travel with, so it's the only reason I converted to ukulele. And I did a couple songs on my first album with the ukulele, and I do my opening and the R&B song for people 30 years and older on the ukulele.
I'm going to listen to it after this for sure.
Sure you will.
I know, I really will. I just didn't. I'm so sorry. The cool thing is, I want to write parody songs. So I already wrote a parody. You know the song "Closing Time"?
Yeah,
like closing. So I'm writing a parody song about me getting a ticket called Quota Time. Like, so I have words for it and everything. Like I was like, this is how I want to do it because I love like Weird Al, but also there are some things that are hard to express in the joke format that are easy to express in a musical comedic way.
I have a bit that I go back and forth between it being a ukulele song and it being just a bit, and either neither work or just haven't cracked the code yet. It's one I've been working on for 2 years. Almost was going to be part of this album, and it's about it got a little harder to work on around pandemic because the relatability changed, but the basis is how fastidious and clean and proper people are at like fancy coffee houses and how they order and like in different languages and stuff, and we all look like the decor of fancy coffee houses and how we look is almost professorial of like leather elbow pads and turtlenecks and pipes and sitting in big chairs and leather and brown and dark greens. But then the condiments counter is a wreck. Like it's a complete mess. It's just like it looks like toddlers have been in there just throwing sugar and like cream. It almost looks like you're blessing your coffee by the cream stand. And so I have a song on the ukulele to the tune of like a toddler kid song. It's down by the bay, da 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 da. I will not have, da da da. It's that tune if you know the song "Down by the Bay," but it's about coffee. It's about condiments counters and coffee houses. So I've tried it, and it both the song and the bit end on a rant, like an explosive, angry rant about why are they so dirty. Um, and I'm not sure if it works better as a song or if it works just purely as a bit. And that is probably going to be something that I'm going to start implementing as now I transition from stuff from the. I record a video version of the special of my album in April, which I don't know when that will come out. But for a production company called 4x3 that's producing a lot of indie comedy specials. So once that eventually comes out, which my guess is going to be probably next summer, I'll have already been started working on some new bits that will make probably whatever the next hour is. But yeah, sorry. That was just a long way of saying, like, it's interesting. You were saying about things that don't necessarily work in spoken word that maybe in the song form are a little bit easier to swallow. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's an interesting experiment and like kind of math equation to figure out.
Well, it's funny because I try to talk about this getting a ticket or whatever, and we all have that experience of having been pulled over, having gotten a speeding ticket or whatever. We all kind of know that feeling, but I was like, it doesn't. It's not as funny in this. It sounds like I'm complaining. It sounds like kind of weird. But when I was driving with my wife back from Vegas, and someone got pulled over by a cop, and I just started singing. I was just like, quota time, time to pull you over because it is the end of the month. Right? She starts laughing. She's like laughing. She's like, why did you say that? I was like, I don't know. It just like came right in my head, like quota time, like, I'm going to pull you over, all that stuff. So I was like, all right, I have to. So we started working on that. That was just one of those things where I was like, I have to talk about this.
And as a narcissistic comedian, because we all are, as a comedian, 100%. All are narcissists. As soon as she started chuckling a little bit.
Yeah.
You were like, oh, I got to write that down. It's gold.
Well, the good thing is she writes stuff down while I'm driving, or I'll record it. She's like, "Oh, we'll write this down."
You got a secretary wife? I need one of those.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's the best. But yeah, she'll write stuff down for me because I'm like, here's a great idea, or we'll be talking, and she'll start laughing. I'm like, oh, we got to write that down. And so just always come up with bits with her in the car, and she's my best barometer for what's actually funny.
Sounding
because
board.
because she'll go, no, you can't talk about that. And I'm like, oh.
So I, my wife is that way as well. One bit in particular that I tried for a very long time was called Caveman Serial Killers, which
already sounds hilarious.
Maybe to other comedians, but like all the times I tried it out, not to an audience. The basis of the bit was if there was a serial killer during caveman time, every case would be the same. It was just be like, well, what was the motive? Like aggression, anger, like why? Because they're cavemen, like things are boring, things are pretty grim. And like, well, what was the weapon? Like a rock.
Yeah.
And like it was a little bit longer. It was a lot longer than that. But like I'd come home from working sets and I would talk to my wife and I was like, caveman serial killer didn't work again tonight. And she's like, honey, I know you think it's funny.
I think it's funny.
But no one else thinks it's funny, clearly. You need to stop doing that bit.
Here's what we should do, because I don't know if you're a fan of this. Have you ever listened to like National Lampoon's Radio Hour or anything like that? Mm-hmm. It's like right into like a little skit or sketch.
Yeah.
Like that you have it like, so it's, and you can even, I think even using the music of like Law and Order, like that Dune, but like, like a different kind of thing with like a cave thing where it sounds like caveman music.
Yeah, it sounded like track.
And then doing a sketch between two caveman cops talking about the crime or whatever. Would be hilarious.
Yeah. Well, so you do the I mean, you would basically do the outline kind of like Mulaney, I think on his first, maybe not his first album, has that bit. He's like, they always go to that guy who's like, he's like, yeah, a lot of people come in this bar and they're like, what about this guy? And he's like, that guy? Oh yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Like he sees a million people in his bar on a Friday and Saturday night, but they always remember that
Remember
one
that.
guy. Yeah.
And then he talks about people moving the boxes as they talk to the cops.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I remember that guy. Like,
oh, that guy? Yeah, I remember him.
I love that. That's one of my favorite bits. I think he also in that album also talks about the vision, the eye thing, like where you like
Jerry Orbach's eyes. He's like, there was a billboard that says about like Jerry Orbach donating his eyes.
Nice, yeah.
Or whatever. And he's like, I would write a romantic comedy where a guy has one of Jerry Orbach's eyes. Yeah. Let's talk about more comedians that are funnier.
Let's talk about you.
John Mulaney.
and Ricky Glore. Let's talk about Ricky Glore.
I mean, look, about my album and stuff, but Mulaney, I cannot wait until I'm assuming Netflix will do his special.
Yeah.
What is that special gonna be? And I know he's been touring, but like his shtick was always so much like, I don't want to have kids. Right. I never have kids. Right. And now
I'm a child. I'm a man child, basically.
Yeah.
Was like his thing. Yeah.
I'm a child. I'm a toddler in a suit. But like, yeah, there's that. And his whole, it was always like, and I haven't touched drugs since I was 20 years old. Like,
yeah,
it's like recovering drug addict, has a child. Like,
right.
What is it? Like,
blew up his marriage. Like, yeah. Oh yeah. That's going to be a weird album, a weird special.
And I'm not sitting there like the hypocrisy of the truth in comedy. I'm just extreme. Well, because when he announced his tour and it was all arenas.
Yeah.
And my knee-jerk reaction wasn't, it's because he's so famous now.
Right.
That's what he has to do. My knee-jerk reaction was, he's got some alimony to pay.
Was he paying on those dogs? Because I think they only had dogs with it, right?
Yeah. My dog children. Petunia.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is because, his big thing was, and then like the Subway joke is like, I'm not a man, I'm a little boy, like that. Like, that's who he was. And now that's not who at least to the public, that's not who he is anymore. So it's going to be really weird trying to see how he turns this a little bit. I'm excited to watch it because I like Mulaney. He's great.
Mulaney cracks me up.
Yeah. So with your special, all of it was about the growth of your relationships, like over the last 2 years. What is the biggest change? Like, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't get to listen to all the jokes yet, but what is the biggest change that you've seen in that 2 years? One in yourself and one in the relationship with your family and your dog, especially your child and stuff like that as well.
I would say the biggest change is, I think me personally, is less cynicism.
Oh.
I don't know if that's necessarily true of performative, of stand-up, because I still feel like no matter, so the constant struggle with any comedian is the comedian's voice, is like finding your voice that you hone in on the most. And even if that voice is close to who you are personally, it's still a performance. So it's still probably a heightened version of who you are.
Right.
And I'm a pretty sarcastic person in life and energetic, but I think on stage, maybe I've become more humble and definitely more relaxed. I mean, the more you do it, you should be more relaxed.
Yeah.
But that's the one bit you listen to. On stage.
I listened to 3, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I started off. I started off working for this hour. Yeah, I start with crowd work for multiple reasons. A little bit of the get to know me. I'm a pretty light, like when a grown man has a ukulele on stage.
Yeah.
There should be this sense of, let's let down our airs and let's have fun. Yeah. Like, this guy's not going to take himself too seriously.
Yeah.
And so there's that reason. There's the comedian always looking for the opening. Like, what's your opening going to be? And so a little bit of that seemed like a little easier way to get into it. And two, the reason the reason for crowd work is the trick of not wanting to hit the audience in the face with planned material,
Right.
because for some reason most audiences think a good stand-up show or a good comedy show is off the cuff and semi-conversational. The best even crowd work comedians, your Ian Baggs, your Harlan Williams, they've done and said almost everything they're doing and saying. My best example of that was the first time my wife, one of the times I was working with Ian Bagg for a weekend, my wife saw him on a Thursday, and he goes into it and his whole show's crowd work. And my wife was like, oh my gosh, like every show must be different. It's amazing how good he is. And I was like, you're coming back Sunday? I'm like, yeah, he's really good. I'm like, you're coming back Sunday? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, you're going to see how the sausage is made. You're going to see how the magician can pull the table spread. But so to start with crowd work, you can trick the audience into feeling relaxed in that they're not being performed to, that they're part of this unique experience, as they should. It's a live experience. Anything can happen. Even the planned stuff isn't necessarily going to be the same, but it brings them in and it feels more like it could be a detriment sometimes. So the second show that we recorded, when we did the album recording, I knew the week of in Utah, I rarely check my filtered messages on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I did. And it was a woman that was just like, hey, me and my bachelorette party are coming to your show on Saturday. Can't wait to be there. If you could shout her out. And I'm just like, oh
no.
On the weekend of my album recording, like, yeah, I love that it's going to be a packed house, but it's Saturday. Saturdays are typically the best shows.
Yeah.
This ended up being the best show ended up being Friday. Luckily, Friday nights, which is what the album is, was awesome. And we're like, we're using that because Saturday, some of the stuff was good, but it was a bachelorette show, you know?
Yeah.
And they sat on front of the stage and had their phones out the whole, like, it was messy. We had fun. I was looser. I would have been, if the show Friday hadn't have been good, I'd have been so angry.
Right.
But so that's why I open with the crowd work. What's awesome is maybe not even like super funny is the opening track of the album, Welcome Jody.
Welcome Jody, yeah.
Well, the Jody, I believe, is the woman's name, who's there with her two other sisters and their husbands. Turns out her husband just died.
Oh no.
And so you can hear it a little bit. The audience audio isn't great. But so at the beginning of that show, I was like, oh no, that's a real sour thing to hit real quick. And I'm asking these questions and she's a little cagey. And I'm like, I'm not a comedian that's going to make fun of, but like, I'm already locked into talking to her. I could move on, but like, I started asking more and more and more. And it turns out like, I'm like, well, why are your two sisters with you and they're with their husbands? Where's your husband? And like, you're just as pretty as them. And she's like, I did have a husband. He's dead. And I was just like, oh, but yeah. I love shoe and mouth. I love some good soul food. But just again, that energy, you could make the mistake of opening up with crowd work and making an audience think that they can talk for the rest of the show.
Yes.
That's
always my fear. That's always my fear is if you start with too much crowd work or you start engaging the audience too early, they now think they can talk during your set. And I've had that happen before with other comedians where maybe when I was the host or I was the opening, I didn't really engage, but the next comedian engaged with the crowd. And then when the headliner got there, now the people think they can talk to any comedian that comes on stage. That makes it real hard.
One of the one of the many unspoken rules, and the rules are meant to be broken and bippity boppity boop, like is anyone, if you're in the MC or the feature spot, you're not supposed to do crowd work because one, you're burning it for the headliner if they do crowd work. Two, yes, the headliner doesn't want the audience to think they can talk and open that door. And then one of the other unspoken rules is if you're MC or a feature, you're not supposed to use an instrument or do impressions.
Yep.
Unspoken comedy rules that
I know. I'm excited because I get to host and then I also get to feature, so I rotate between shows like that. So I love the fact that I can host and do a bunch of stuff here's all that's material, and then for the feature I can play around a little more and be silly and have fun. And I can
feature
do impressions.
spot's the best. Yeah,
It's
feature
the best
spot's
spot.
the best spot ever. It's
It's
no
so
pressure, and I love still doing hosting spots because it takes a different mindset of knowing like, okay, the audience does not care about you.
Yep.
Like at all. Like you are not the show, but you still have to really consciously make a tight 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different mindset and different tools.
Well, it's like I always say, like if you want to relate to sports, like being the MC, you're a boxer. You're going in there for a fight. You have to win that first 10 minutes. That's when you have to win. The audience has to get on board. You have to get everybody into the same mindset, get them mind melded to be ready for a show. The feature, you're the card girl. You're just carrying out the card, waving in front of everybody, like, woohoo, this is fun, right? And then for the headliner, you're the main event. You're the champion. You're the belt. You're there for the belt. That's all you're gonna do is win that belt. Everyone else, they don't care. But you're the announcer in the beginning, and that is the hardest spot. But I love hosting. And too many comedians skip hosting or don't want to host. They're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be MC. That's where you learn. That's where you cut your teeth. That's where you get your licks in, and you learn to really do a show, I think.
Yeah, I think like there could be a certain level of headliner, I guess, when you reach a certain level of celebrity or fame, that things change. In my mind, I like it to think of it like a rock concert. You have the opening band, which is the local,
right?
Who I want them to do well. A couple jokes will pop, but yeah, you're right. The audience is focusing like, okay, they're still at the concession stand, there's blah blah blah, but they're starting to look, they're starting to look like, okay, this is what it's going to be for the night. We're looking up here, and this is the rhythm, and then the feature comes out. I want them to do even better, and I want it to be it's the touring group that maybe has like one hit song that you maybe have heard of, but like they blow it out of the water, and then the feature leaves them on such a high that when the headliner comes out, the energy is raucous, and it's just a rock concert, and the audience is just ready to go, and they're just the roller coaster is just at the zenith. But then there's some, like I've heard this more recently, headliners of a certain notoriety and fame, where they've heard like, oh, your opener, we didn't care for your opener. And I can't remember if it was Bill Burr or George Carlin or who I heard this quote attributed to, was, I don't care if the opener's not any good. People didn't buy a ticket to see them. They're just a time filler. And I guess I understand that to a degree. Right. But for me, maybe if you were as famous as they were, you're not looking to like I think Patton Oswalt is known notoriously as trying to pluck up and comers.
Right. Yeah.
And like he gave Ron Funches his start, people who've made a name for themselves. And so he is mindfully like trying to find people that are going to eventually pop. I guess you could go the other way. And I don't think it's a bad thing if you're just like, I don't care. Can they do the time? Are they not going to be a weird juxtaposition against what I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they're not going to be too similar. Like, I was just going to say, it's so interesting, different ways you can view, and I guess at different levels of comedy, how it can be done. My modus operandi of like putting together a show is I would prefer there not to be three middle-aged white guys that look and sound and talk about the same things as I do.
Right.
Because I think that's also annoying if you go to an open mic and it's 5 white 20-year-old guys,
talking about Tinder and Uber.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, this just gets repetitive and it's kind of unoriginal. Where I'd rather see a show of like 3 different comedians and different points of view, even if I don't love or dig what they're doing. Like if one of them goes up with like a piano or a ukulele, yeah, music comedy. There's always that knee jerk of just like, let's see how this is.
Right.
Um, but I would rather see that of almost like a vaudeville kind of thing
Yeah.
than just see the same opinion 3 times in a row.
I'm actually like leaning more into vaudeville type stuff or things that are kind of unique. I've been listening to History of Stand Up with Wayne Fetterman. I don't know if you've listened to that series that podcast series, but it's making me realize there's a lot of things that we've lost in comedy through
Hmm.
the years that can be brought back. And then with Weird Al's thing, Weird coming out and stuff, and then hearing you do the ukulele, I was like, okay, I'm on the right path here. Like these are things that need to come back that we need to have. I love that you play the ukulele. That's so good. Have you ever wanted to do like just like a comedy music album, like a Weird Al type parody song album or something like that, or not really?
No, but I do like, so I have been doing within the past couple of years more film things. I like collaborating a lot and
Yeah.
working with
Talk
others.
about your movie. Talk about your movie too, because I know we didn't get to talk about that either.
All your friends are dead.
Yeah.
It will be, we'll be announcing distribution here after the first of the year, um, and we're currently working on pre-work for our next feature. But anyway, All Your Friends Are Dead is a super low budget dark comedy horror movie, uh, written, directed, and starring myself. Not starring myself because of the being a narcissist, because of necessity of it being a $5,959 movie.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's it.
stupid
Wow.
low budget. Well, so I always say it's $5,959 budget with an extra $10,000 worth of favors that
That makes sense.
people.
Now, okay, so for that, how long did that take you to film and do and whatever?
We I mean, the gestation of that was real quick. My friend Nick Hyance, who co-directed and contributed for the story and was also the cinematographer, we've filmed different things together and have been friends since high school and did a public access sketch comedy show back in the day. Um, we were talking about like, oh, we regret if we never attempted to make a feature length film. So like,
Right.
let's put our money where our mouth is. What do we have? What could we do? Kind of that 90s indie film like Kevin Smith thing of like, well, he's like, well, I got the convenience store and I'll just write it about me. And so we were like, well, what do we have? We could use this, this, and this. I was like, well, what should the story be? Well, we have me as an actor, and I at that time was 200 or 335 pounds. Um, so I knew how I looked. I had gotten hurt playing football in high school, and then went into theater. Well, we were like, well, hypothetically, like, what if I hadn't have converted my passion into something else? If I'd had maybe fallen into depression and maybe alcohol and drugs or whatever, and just been that guy, and been like, yeah, my glory days were in high school, and
Right.
I no longer looked like I did. And so we put that with the story of what if the Breakfast Club turned into the Big Chill and went camping in a Friday the 13th movie.
Oh, I like that.
Way more succinctly, the first website that picked up when we were doing our Kickstarter for our budget condensed that without having to have a knowledge of any of those movies, and made the headline, what happens when the teen slasher film grows up? And I was like, that's much better. And I took that and I added that to our press releases.
That's so awesome.
So yeah,
And then
and so
how
that
many week did you shoot? Did you shoot over a weekend or weeks or?
we when the bulk of the movie, which is the middle with the most amount of dedicated cast, we filmed at like a 48-hour film festival. If anyone has ever shot anything with a script, you'll know that this is crazy ambitious and foolish, but it's how we thought we had to do it. We filmed 32 pages in one day. um,
Whoa.
32 pages of dialogue. And so we filmed 2 days, 32 pages of dialogue, and then the stuff that needed special effects the next day.
Wow.
And that's basically all we used that cast for, was that 2 days, and then filmed the rest of the movie for the next. We started in July. We wrapped ultimately in December
Wow.
with some pickup things here and there. But we really filmed July through October, um, non-chronologically. So the middle of the movie first, which I think is evident when you watch the movie. I think
Okay.
tonally, the beginning of the movie, which we shot closer to the end, and the end of the movie, which we shot closer to the end, fit really well together. And the middle tonally kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because it was the first thing we filmed.
Oh wow.
But that's all. That's a whole. The best thing about it was when we had our premiere at a movie theater. The 2 times we screened it that I was in person, but I haven't gone to any of the festivals that it's been in. The first time we screened it for cast and crew, there was way more laughter than we kind of thought there would be.
Right.
And like, not that they were laughing at it, like things just ended up funnier that we
Right.
weren't necessarily like leaning into. Some of it we were, some of it we weren't. So it played more like a dark comedy. And we are like, well, everyone who is there at that screening kind of wants it to succeed. No one there, cast and crew and friends of cast and crew, no one wanted to be there and be like, this sucks.
Right.
But so the next screening we did 2 weeks later, which was an open screening in Cincinnati, was the screening was filled, and a majority of people we didn't know. So we now had that first screening. We're like, okay, well, this is the first time people laughed in the movie. We're coming up to that. Let's see. And then they laughed just as hard. And it was like interesting. And then other moments were coming, and then some that the first screenings didn't laugh at. Like, it played much more as a comedy. There's a review, and I don't know how they saw the movie. Maybe it was at a festival. A movie review website gave the movie, I think, a C or a C plus, which I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's an online review. These people are snarky.
Right.
They could have just trashed the movie and just been, because right online it's love it or hate it. And so for me, a C right in the middle of the road, that's way more interesting to me than a love or a hate. And their biggest criticism was that some horror movies need to stop calling themselves horror movies because the horror doesn't happen until X amount of time into the movie. This is more of a black comedy. And that was its biggest mark against it, was that the horror took, in their mind, the slasher element of it took too long. And they're not wrong. The first kill doesn't happen until an hour into the movie, and the movie's only 92 minutes. But when the first kill happens, it is nonstop for the next 32 minutes of gore and kill. But
that's awesome. Well, you're a busy guy, so that's awesome. You're making your special. You're going to record your next one in. This is going to be actually recorded, filmed in April of next year. Is that right? 2023? Is that what you said?
Yeah. By I think the company's 4x3. If you Instagram them, they've been releasing an onslaught of some really cool specials, really good looking specials, and so I'm excited to see. It's going to be in a theater in Michigan.
Nice.
Yeah, I have no idea how it's going to turn out, what it's going to look like, but most of the stuff is probably going to be what the album is, with some variances here or there with, the opening crowd work. And then the album ends with me doing a Q&A that I've started doing, because that again just brings out some unexpected things, like one of which was I talk about a little bit about losing weight in on the album, but then someone asked in the Q&A, do you have any other stories about losing weight? And a story came out that had just happened with me at the airport on my way to record the album, which was I got stopped by TSA by going through this machine. And it's the first time I have flown a lot since losing weight. And this is the first time this happened. He's like, raise your hands, blah, blah, blah. And the guy was very dry. And he's like, lift up your flaps. And I was like, he's like, have you lost a lot of weight recently? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, that's what it looks like. He's like, your skin flaps make it look like you're concealing something. I don't even remember how I answered the question. It's a lot funnier on the album. But like, I've really enjoyed doing Q&As, because there will be questions that are ridiculous and really fun. And then there'll be questions that are a little bit more serious that are still end up being fun. Like, one was not on the album, but the night before I recorded the album, I did a show in Iowa, whatever state is close to Utah. I did a show the night before.
There's Idaho above it, Nevada.
Idaho.
Iowa.
Geography, not so good. But so yeah, Idaho. started the Q&A and I was like, so yeah, ask a question, like anything you've heard during the show that you have a question about or just anything, like, and someone was like, are you pro-choice? And I was just like caught me off guard. And I was like, I'm not caught off guard because I don't want to answer the question. That's the first time anybody has asked that serious of a question, like right out off the bat. Like I'm used to like, all right, if you're in a zombie apocalypse, like, like I was like, oh, it's so interesting. And like when I did the album, someone asked me where I got my suit from that I was wearing while doing the album, and I was like, oh, okay, like, yeah, it's just interesting. I don't know if it's laziness of me, of like, am I ADD? Like it's something that is kind of different every time that gets
Yeah.
me interested. But I just really like the spontaneity of doing a Q&A.
No, Q&As are awesome. When David Studebaker and I went to Alaska, we did a church, and at the end of our sets, came out together and did a Q&A, and it was awesome to just like to do the Q&A because yeah, you ask questions and then you could tell other funny stories or talk about things that you weren't thinking of, and maybe to you in that moment, like you've had that story, but you've never like maybe you told it to your friends and family or whatever, and you've never figured out, oh, that could be funny to somebody else, and then you
Yep.
start telling it, people laugh, and you're like, okay, that might be another bit that I can work on at some point.
You're working material, and when you set something up like crowd work or Q&A, the trick of that too is you can work bits, and because of the spontaneity where it doesn't seem rehearsed or they think it's not rehearsed and you haven't ever said this before, sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not, you can use that chunk as a way to work bits that aren't getting super judged harshly. And then if you're recording, I always recommend, people always want to record video to post clips and stuff, which is fine. But I think if you're really working bits, don't get bogged down on the camera angle or the look for the clips. And I know TikTok and self-promotion, I'm
terrible at it, by the way.
yeah.
So I'm the worst at it. I don't do it.
I hate doing it. It's my least favorite thing of performing. But audio, like when you're working a bit, that's the best way to hear pauses. Are you saying it fast? Is that maybe why they didn't hear specific wording? Should you play around with where the words land? In a Q&A, yeah, if someone asks a question, you can be like, "Oh, I've been working on this bit. That's that. Let's do it in the gentlest way that your baby of a joke can live without getting gunned down in the streets of putting it in the rest of your set."
Yeah.
Because all comedians want to make the mistake of like new joke you're excited about opening with it in your first 2 minutes.
Been there.
That's the best way to watch your child die.
Yeah, it feels like, oh, did I just sacrificed this joke to the altar of comedy, and everyone's like, no, we hate it, and you're like, but I love this. I want to,
and it will derail the rest
everything
of your
else.
set.
Yep, 100%. And this thing is, this is why I love this podcast. This is why I love doing it, is because comedians can only understand what other comedians go through, right? If you try to tell it to another person, like, who cares? You can just try it again later, and you're like, no, you don't understand. Like, this is.
Or you tell it to someone who doesn't know. They go, wait, your stuff is written?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's like, yeah. Like, I don't go up there for 45 minutes to an hour. Okay. Now, the private show that I mentioned with 30 people,
the
first 20 minutes of that, I did just talk to them because they really liked it and it just was kind of more interesting. And then I found that open window to then slide into material. And because the one of the people who organized it had seen my clip of impressions and they're like, we really like that. And I was like, okay, I'll close with that. So I then had to work my way back to getting into that because I had already voiced, it's like a cover band where it's like Jim Gaffigan. He'll come back out and on his encore and do Hot Pockets because he knows people. He's one of the few comedians, like a rock band, that doing a bit that everyone knows, the audience isn't like, oh, I know that bit. This isn't spontaneous.
Yeah, we saw him. I saw him in LA at the what is it called? The outdoor theater there, whatever.
The Greek.
The Greek, yeah, which is also terrible to get in and out of, by the way. But I saw the Greek. He did his whole thing set, and then he left. And then I was like, he didn't do like any of like old stuff. Like he didn't do it. And then he came back out and he did Hot Pockets and he did a couple other voice ones that he does, like the low voice, the whispering voice thing. So it's like,
I don't think he's gonna do Hot
yeah,
Pockets.
yeah, exactly right. So like he came out and did like another like 10 or 15 minutes of that stuff that was like, tried and true. We all know, we all want to hear. We're all still gonna laugh at Hot Pockets a million times. It doesn't matter.
And
And
is like, how awesome is that to be at that level? That it should be like that.
yeah,
Like this is a true story. When I recorded my first album in Pittsburgh, after the first show, which again is the show we used for the recording, the owners of the club came up to me, and I was like, "Yeah, how was it?" And they're like, "Oh, everyone loved it. Everyone had a good time." And they said, except for one woman. I was like, "Oh, I think I know what woman." I was like, "She didn't dig it." And they're like, "Well, she asked for her money back." I was like, "Why?" I was like, "She didn't like it that much. Like, it's an album recording. Why would you have come?" And they said, "No, her complaint was she watched all your videos online before coming, and everything you did was things that she had seen." And I was like, "Well, you don't like watch one video, don't watch everything, and then be upset that like it's an album recording. Clearly, it's a culmination of." And
yeah,
there's that comedian discussion of like,
wow,
should you put clips online and burn your material? I've
right,
heard two trains of thought. Um, you should only put up crowd work because
right.
it'll
That's
never
what
be
I
the
always hear.
same.
Right,
Or Trent, I think his name's Trent Marbury, uh, comedian that opened for me for my album recording, who has really good looking clips. Um, he's like, I put up whatever. And he's like, because I'm not big enough that someone's going to be like, oh, I know this. Like the likelihood of someone seeing that clip and being at my show. And
right,
he's like, and if it is such a good bit, maybe like it's one person. Like I'm
right.
not going to like, so he's like, I'd
Yeah,
rather get the hits with the clips and maybe build up a notoriety than worry about quote unquote burning material.
right. No, I'm on. I think it's the Steve Hofstetter train of thought of just putting up crowd work stuff, right? Because then you like, but then here's his problem. His problem was he's putting up crowd work with like heckler stuff, and then everyone he wants to go and heckle to get
Mm-hmm.
on one of those videos. So then he like it becomes this self fulfilling prophecy type thing of like, oh no, do I want to do? That's the other problem
And
with
like,
putting up crowd work stuff too.
well, and he has curated that is his brand.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
he's
but
great
what
at it.
he's well, and he's from what I've noticed, not that I have any personal experience, I've seen that he has done more of the, not that he's not ripping this off, but I think he's borrowing a page out of it to assist the evolve the heckling thing or whatever. Is he's doing more of like a bumping mics where
Yeah,
he's having other two comedians who are opening for him join him on stage, so it's more of a town hall
yeah,
kind of thing and less of an angry heckle, more of like a basement, like, and you're with everyone in the audience and the three comedian on the stage, we're all friends and we're all going to
right.
talk about and blah, and they're the professionals, so they're going to be funnier and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is what he is.
That's what he's moved it into.
Yeah.
I like. I mean, I like it, but that's the thing is he. The problem was that he was playing the heckler. He started putting up heckler videos, and then people wanted to heckle him to get on the video. So now he has, and he's like, oh man. But so then it's like, well, what do you do? Do you stop posting them so people stop heckling? But he's getting so many likes and so much of it that it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's a weird dynamic. I'm impressed that he was able to do that and make something out of it because I think a lot of comedians are going like, I don't want to be heckled. Like I don't want to deal with
Mm-hmm.
that. So I'm not going to keep pushing this. But he was like, if this is getting views and this is what people are coming for, then we'll give the people what they want. And he's great at it. He's
Yeah,
better at it than most people.
there's an interesting, I don't think you should ever pander to an audience,
Right.
but uh, what comes it's so hard because I though my mantra is I go on stage to entertain. And
Right.
I'm like you were saying, like with the vaudeville nature, that's where I come from. I come from appreciation of sketch comedy, vaudeville, old comedy, any way to entertain. I am down for it. You asked before about like doing songs and leaning more into like doing maybe like a whole album or that, leaning into more of a brand, like
Right.
an easier to market brand of like he is a musical comedian. I've
Right.
actually thought more of like moving away from that because I'm not it enough
Oh,
But I like doing it. So that's where I'm at. Devil Angel on the shoulder bit is I like being expressive in entertainment in my stand up, in my comedy, by all those different avenues, as well as like in film. So so in the movie All Your Friends Are Dead, I knew that I wanted a kind of podunk country song called "Hang in There" that I wrote to play during one of the scenes. The lead character is gonna. This isn't. There is earnest humor in it. This isn't played for laugh to make fun of suicide. He's gonna hang himself, and
right.
so there's the song "Hang in There" that I wrote that sounds like a country song, but is pointedly written with hanging lyrics.
Right.
Um, but so I collaborated and had it arranged because musically I'm not developed enough to like completely arrange it the way I wanted to,
Right.
and had an artist sing it, and I really love the song. So I'm working with her. This next project is basically what if Smokey and the Bandit were a horror movie.
Oh,
So
yes.
within the script, I've written 6 original songs, country songs that are very predatorial because like there's like 50s and 60s songs are like, "Ooh, I'm going to get that girl and she don't even
Yeah.
know it yet," and like that girl's
Yeah.
going to be mine, and oh, 16-year-old, and like, "Oh, that's weird." Um but those songs like have this predatorial male machismo sexist nature. So I leaned into that to the lyrics for this horror movie, and so she's going to arrange them and record them, and do that. So like Tarantino likes doing needle drops.
Yeah.
I like writing my own, and like I did original musicals in Chicago. I love I like blending those 3 things because I think emotionality, those 3 things are things that bring out that people emotionally connect to the most. Music, you can pinpoint times in your life with different songs and stuff with emotions. um, Horror, because like comedy, if something scares you or irks you or makes you uneasy, that elicits a response from you, a visceral response, like comedy. Because then if you can laugh, that laughter is a visceral response. So playing with all 3 of them, horror and comedy especially, if you
Yeah.
can make someone uneasy and then make them laugh and then and then set them off their guard, the horror may pop more, the comedy may pop more, because again, the juxtaposition of the 2,
Right.
and then infuse some music in there.
I
That's
love it.
yeah, that's what I want to do. I can't even remember what we were talking about before.
I don't know, but we went everywhere with it. Well, when does the album come out? Where can people find it when it does come out? And where can people find you at?
Because this episode is dropping on January 3rd, the
Yeah.
album is already available
Awesome.
everywhere. It is on
Yay.
iTunes. I'm guessing you can probably buy a physical version of it on comedydynamics.com. iTunes, you can stream it. The physical album will be shorter than if you listen to it digitally online,
Oh.
because to fill one CD, I think it's 79 minutes or 82 minutes, and with the question and answer it ran a little long, and I decided not to make it a double disc because there's no reason for me to have a double disc comedy
Smashing
album.
Pumpkins, come on, man. No, I'm just kidding. Was it, what,
I'm not that prolific.
when is the last? I can't even remember the last. I think the last one I bought was either Smashing Pumpkins or the Notorious B.I.G. had like a double album thing.
As they
Life After Death.
rightfully should. Yeah.
Yeah,
As
but I can't remember anybody else who has that. To be honest with you,
I don't know that I can think of a double, like I remember there being Comedy Central used to do the double albums where the CD
had a
was
DVD
the
too
album
though.
and then the DVD. Yeah. So like
Yeah,
Berbiglia or Mitch Hedberg like had those.
Dane Cook had
Um,
one.
yes. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
His were huge for that. But so
yeah.
yeah, iTunes, World's Greatest Dad participant, Spotify, they're up there, they're out to listen to, and I imagine pretty much anywhere else where you could buy albums. I think Amazon, it'll be up there. Wherever you get your music, you can search Ricky Glore and you can get Spitting Image and you can get World's Greatest Dad and have yourself a little back to back. See the
There you go.
evolution of my daughter's picture, like literal picture, from 6 months as a baby to 3 years old. And hopefully there's an evolution of the comedy as well that you enjoy.
Yeah. And then where can everyone find you at, Ricky? Where if they want to reach out to you and say, "Hey, come to my town," or "Where are you going to be?" or whatever.
Everywhere. I would do a show anywhere. They Twitter at Ricky Glore, Instagram at Glore Ricky, TikTok at Ricky Glore, Facebook at Ricky Glore Comedy. Google my name. And stay up to date on when my movie All Your Friends Are Dead will be released. If you like any bit of my comedy, the first album and my special Dry Bar special Dad Bod and my second album feature segments where I do talk about my love of horror movies. And
Perfect.
so you will see, if you listen to that and you're like, oh, I like his take on horror movies or the way he examines it with humor, that is evident in the movie All Your Friends Are Dead.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Please go follow Ricky. Go get his album if you haven't got it yet. Gonna go get it when it comes out. I'm gonna get it. So January 3rd, this will be out.
You've already got it. You don't
I already
have
have it.
to buy
I
it.
do already have it, but I still will buy it because I like supporting it. Glenn Tickle did the same thing to me, and I still always buy albums. I support my friends. That's what I do. I love comedy. I want comedians to profit. That's my whole shtick in life. So thank you guys so much for listening. Ricky, thank you again. Everyone have a good one, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.